Hi, my name is Angie Milam, and for my presentation I chose Teaching on Forgiveness, Matthew 18 verses 21 through 35. So it reads, Peter came and said to him, Lord, if another member of the church sins against me, how often should I forgive? As many as 7 times? Jesus said to him, not 7 times, but I tell you 77 times. For this reason, the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who wished to settle accounts with his slave. When he began the reckoning, one who owed him 10,000 talents was brought to him, and as he could not pay, his lord ordered him to be sold together with his wife and children and all his possessions, and payments to be made. So the slave fell on his knees before him, saying, have patience with me, and I will pay you everything. And out of pity for him, the lord of that slave released him and forgave him the debt. But the same slave, as he went out, came upon one of his fellow slaves who owed him 100 denarii. And seizing him by the throat, he said, pay what you owe. Then his fellow slave fell down and pleaded with him, have patience with me, and I will pay you. But he refused. Then he went and threw him into prison until he would pay the debt. When his fellow slaves saw what had happened, they were greatly distressed, and they went and reported to the Lord all that had taken place. Then the Lord summoned him and said to him, you wicked slave, I forgave you all that debt because you pleaded with me. Should you not have had mercy on your fellow slave as I had mercy on you? And in anger the Lord handed him over to be tortured until he would pay his entire debt. So my heavenly Father will also do to every one of you if you do not forgive your brother or sister from your heart. In the literary world, it's pretty literal. It says that we are supposed to forgive. How many times? He tells Peter 77 times. Some of the words can be lost in translation, but for the most part, we understand that Jesus is telling us to forgive. The amount of forgiveness should be, again and again and again. The Lord forgives the slave. The slave doesn't reciprocate that forgiveness he was shown. The Lord then comes back and revokes his forgiveness. In the historical world, understanding what 10,000 talents means is important. It's a sum amounting more than the entire tribute paid to Galilee to Rome over 15 years. It's such a large amount. We know that from our earlier readings, we talk about tax and tax collectors and how they were just taxed and they had nothing left, and Rome was bleeding them dry. And so the amount of 10,000 is so large that that debt was great, and so the forgiveness that the Lord had shown the slave was great as well. Understanding what the second slave owed was 100 denarii, meaning a day's wage. So the amount that the second slave owed was a small amount compared to the first slave. The Lord forgave him for such a large debt. This second slave didn't have that much debt, but he still was not forgiven. And we also see the slave is later tortured. Now, when we think of tortured, I think of medieval times, somebody causing bodily harm. In this text, it's stated as somebody who was coercing their family for money, so taking their money from the family, and it also is an assertion of his money. So I take it as maybe like taxing his income or taking the money right from him without giving him the opportunity, just taking everything he has until his debt is closed. On the contemporary world, I see it as basic hypocrisy. I know this world we live in today lacks forgiveness. I myself work every day to try to be more forgiving and more understanding to my coworkers, to my family, to people I encounter. It's hard. Forgiveness is hard for me, and I work at it every day. Jesus tells us we're supposed to forgive and forgive. The Lord comes around and gets fed up. So in the contemporary world, I see it as, somebody who says, I forgave you one time. You did this to me again. I can't forgive you again. How many times am I supposed to forgive you? I washed my hands with you. I'm done. We're not friends anymore. But that goes against what Jesus is teaching us. We're supposed to forgive them again and again. So the Lord gets upset with him, and he tells him, I'm taking everything from you. You're getting tortured. You owe me the money, and you're going to pay me, and I'm going to force you to. So he lets his anger get the best of him. And the slave who was shown forgiveness also doesn't show that forgiveness to somebody else. As soon as we're just forgiven, sometimes somebody does something and we get upset and we don't forgive them. So how many times are we supposed to forgive? Jesus teaches us many, many times. How many times do we want to be forgiven? You know, at the last verse says, so my heavenly Father will also do to every one of you if you do not forgive your brother and sister from your heart. You know, Jesus is going to hold us accountable if we're not forgiven, if we're not forgiving others. So we not want to be forgiven. Jesus shows us forgiveness, and in return, we need to be forgiving as well. So I hope you enjoyed my presentation, and thank you for watching.